What do you think makes up the perfect pitch?
Most people underestimate understanding the consumer. You cannot solve a problem on behalf of someone when you don't understand what that person's problems are. There's room for a lot of agencies to be competitive, but if we are all fighting, for that same pie, then at one point, you will see your revenues dwindling.
Yeah.
If you understand your market, nobody can compete against you.
Yeah.
If you understand your consumer, nobody can compete against you. But everybody still wants that multinational, because they want the credibility, but then it comes with very little revenue.
Yeah.
You have to know the value of what you're offering. I'm not a yes agency. I've said no to big brands because I don't believe we will have a meeting of minds. I'm not here to do and regurgitate what the client wants me to do. I'm here to solve real business problems. Great advertising only works if it actually solves the problem that the client is facing. There is no need of being creative if it's not effective. It can be creative and it can be effective, great. My first salary was 12,000 shillings gross. I think my first commission was like 60,000. But by the time I was leaving Nation Media Group, in a month I could easily make 1.5 million.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Financially Incorrect. I am your host, Barrack. And of course, as you know, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, this podcast is proudly sponsored by none other than FX Pesa. Do yourself a favor, please do check out the links in the description box if you never have. They give you access to the global markets for trading. And if you do not know how to trade and you'd like to know how to do it, they offer classes. If you're in Tanzania or Uganda, you can attend physical classes. However, unfortunately, if you're in Kenya, you can only get your classes online. But the links in the description box, just description box or the comments, so please be sure to check them out. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. To be 100% honest, I'm not sure whose episode it was that went out, but because we've been recording so many episodes recently. But this week, of course, it's a Friday, so it means I have another money story that I'm bringing to you, one that is rare. I think the person I'm interviewing today, I tried to look for any media presence because I was like, there's no way that you have had the career that she has had and not spoken anywhere or not been seen anywhere. But I couldn't find anything. Not a single thing. And she said it's almost been intentional. But anyway, with me today I have none other than Sally Sawe, who is the co-founder and chief operations officer of the partnership Africa, powered by Publicis. Welcome to the Financially Incorrect podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a journey to get here.
Yeah.
And definitely you will find more interviews as the year continues. Yeah.
Frankie's pushing you to do more and more interviews. Frankie's been here.
He feels that I should be much more in the forefront. I am a person who pushes everybody else into the forefront because I do believe they should be at the forefront. But well, I guess it's time.
Do you think possibly within the career span that you've had, because of your almost non-desire to be in the limelight or being front-facing, so to speak, that there's some opportunities that potentially passed you by as a result?
I actually don't think so because in the background where it matters, I am extremely forward.
Okay.
That means in the CEO's office, that means in the finance manager's office, everywhere where it counts. I am extremely forward. I guess it was just mostly to the public, and that I don't think has derailed anything for me. But I guess it's time. I'm building my own, and I don't think I should call it a startup anymore. It's almost 2 years old, and we have achieved quite a bit. So it's time to talk a bit about myself. And I think what interested me in this it's because I'm not talking about my work. I am talking about me. And I think that would be more interesting to people who are listening rather than just listening to more of, corporate
Speak.
I was going to use another word, but
Okay. So usually when I start this podcast, I started with a question that's, totally left field. And it's a question that I thought I would ask you, even though you say you don't want to talk about your work, but it may touch on it to some extent. In your experience, and I guess with stuff that you've done, what do you think makes up the perfect pitch?
I think most people underestimate understanding the consumer. That, to me, it is the heart of everything. You cannot solve a problem on behalf of someone when you don't understand what that person's problems are. When they wake up in the morning, what is it that is driving them crazy? What has kept them awake at night? What are the struggles that they are facing? What is their financial position in the first place? Is this something that is solving a problem for them? It has to be everything about them. And if you understand that, then you can solve any problem and therefore you can win any pitch. A lot of people, though, and I think you see it more often, is that if you look at even some of the billboards that are out there, I mean, people will talk about them, but I don't really believe they're solving anybody's problem, because
Some of these more racy.
yes, they've become very racy. It feels like a cool thing. It makes people laugh. But the next day, somebody else does another funnier one, and that is yesterday's news. And because I think it's just people trying, and I think it's influenced quite a bit by social media. It's all about, let's make it viral. And that has now sort of gotten into the way people pitch. But if you don't solve anybody's problem, within no time, clients will come and tell you whatever you're giving us is not selling. It's all bullshit. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's what it is. Because at the end of the day, any client who values what you're bringing to the table should ask you, how effective was it? Did it really move the needle on sales? Did it sell my product? Do people have more affinity, or are they buying more of my product? If it is not able to do that, then it is all nonsense, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay.
And therefore, that's what I immerse myself in consumers. I want to understand their lives, their pain points. And I think that's where everybody should begin.
Yeah. What's your take on the general advertising sort of marketing space right now in Kenya? What's your take on where, like, your sort of your pulse on where we are at right now, where the industry is? Is it shrinking? I've had a number of people talking about shrinking commissions or reducing commissions from things used to be over potentially 20%. Now people are more in like between 13 to 18% and things like that.
Yeah.
What's your feel?
It's true. I mean, procurement is definitely playing a bigger role in revenues for agencies. But I think the limitation is close to what I've just spoken about. Because even for procurement, they look at the numbers. But if you're able to deliver value, if you're able to show that this can actually drive your growth in terms of revenue, then even procurement begins to open their wallets. In the past, it used to be marketers who used to make these decisions, and so the money was flowing. Today, everybody wants to see that you can actually deliver on the KPIs that they want you to meet. And so we see a lot of that. But I think that there's also been a bit of limitation in terms of agencies trying to only focus on the big brands. Everybody wants to work for Diageo, Safaricom, this, that. But there is actually a growing tier 2 and tier 3 of whether that you can call them larger SMEs, smaller SMEs that have huge potential. Their businesses are growing. They're probably family run. They have a lot of budget. They need hand holding. But everybody wants to make money quickly. They require time. They require hand-holding. They've probably never spent the kind of money big brands will ask for. And therefore, you can build it up if they see the value. And I think there's room for a lot of agencies to be competitive. But if we are all fighting, for that same pie, then at one point, you will see your revenues dwindling.
Yeah.
You need to be able to look at what else is happening in the market and what the opportunities that those bring.
Yeah. And I mean, how many tier 1 opportunities are there anyway? Like how many?
It's finite.
how
Kenya
many
is a
big
very
companies? Yeah.
small market. You cannot in Africa, you cannot compare it to perhaps South Africa or even North Africa. I mean, our markets are very small. And even the multinationals who come here, Kenya is not where they start. You see, they're based out of Dubai, they're based out of South Africa, and we are only getting a small piece of that pie. So why not build homegrown brands? That's what we did even in the previous agency. That's what we are doing. Most of my clients are homegrown African brands, and they have helped me to build my agency because I'm interested in focusing on them. Because again, I say, if you understand your market, nobody can compete against you.
Yeah.
If you understand your consumer, nobody can compete against you. But everybody still wants that multinational, because they want the credibility, but then it comes with very little revenue.
Yeah. I mean, what's your take on this, right? Because there's a lot of these sort of smaller sort of disruptive marketing agencies that show up, right? But then slowly they sort of use more, come with more of an undercutting model. It's just that we are offering the product at a cheaper rate.
Yes.
However, then you sort of growing a bit. You sort of start growing, and then you get a little bit of a bigger client. Maybe you get in the tier 2, tier 3 sort of bracket, and then you realize, I need to hire more people, and then slowly you realize that you need to have your rates a little closer to the people you're sort of undercutting, and then that happens. Or if that doesn't happen, then you sort of dissolve and disappear, right?
Yes.
So what's your take on like just the agency model and how agencies can make money and
Yes.
stay afloat in 2025?
I think the first thing is that you have to know the value of what you're offering. And you have to stand by it, because a lot of times, for the client, they will come and tell you, it's 50 bob. Even if you're saying, I'm offering you something worth 1,000 bob. And, if you want to compromise from there, then you'll compromise on everything. Because if you accept 50 bob, what does that mean? You can't hire anybody great. And therefore, what you're delivering is not an excellent product. And if it then fails, then the client then pushes you again, and you can't go back and say, oh, but you only paid me 50 bob because you accepted 50 bob. I think that's it in a nutshell. You have to know your value, and you have to push for it. Even when I tell people, when we started this business, we had some, clients who are paying us very little money. At the time, we took it because we wanted to build. But immediately we had to change up because we were growing and we wanted to hire good people. We actually let go of a number of clients, and we got them because when we got into this business, we bought an agency that ideally had some clients. We started talking to those clients about the value that we could bring, and immediately started telling them, you need to pay us a bit more because this is what we can do for your business. Obviously, they said, no, but we've been paying, and we were satisfied. And to me, I said, okay, maybe that's why your business is going to remain the size that it's going to remain.
Yeah.
And it's a tough stance, because I understand that a lot of times you compromise because you have to pay bills at the end of the month, you have to pay suppliers, and therefore sometimes you compromise. But I always tell people that compromise in the end is why many agencies that opened at the height of COVID, because everybody went digital, today don't exist. And why many of them, 10 years, while they exist, they're literally living hand to mouth. Their businesses have never really grown. They make enough to pay the bills and maybe have something slightly left over. And when people come into these markets and they want to look and buy agencies, they are never on the list. And that compromise starts from not understanding what your value is, or being willing to compromise on that value, not wanting to pay experienced people, saying, I can do this with interns because I can just pay them very little money. And that compromise follows you until the death of your business, I tell you.
Okay. And when you're determining your value, right, as an agency or in your space, and maybe you'll speak a bit about how you guys do that partnership, do you determine your price point based on the amount of value you're going to drive for the business, or do you determine your value proposition based on what you feel you bring to the table?
You see, at agencies, we are like lawyers. We sell our time, and therefore what you're paying for is my experience. The way we calculate retainers is based on this person's time on your business. So you're paying for my expertise. That's what people pay for. But if you don't understand what that value is, then how do you price it? I tell people that I can drive revenue growth for a client, but there are many elements outside of communication that also drive revenue growth. The product has to be in the right place. It has to be the right product. It has to solve the right problem. It has to be at the right price. So many other elements will drive growth. But when we bring the right communication, people will come to your door. Now, what you then do from that point is a lot of the times up to you.
Yeah.
I will get people, to come to the store, to be interested in your product, but your product has to live up to what we are promising. And a lot of times, many things sometimes will fall out there. But I price my experience. I price my knowledge, my understanding, because not everybody that can do what I can do. And I tell you, that's the best example I can give you. We are like lawyers. We sell every hour. You talk to me. I talk to you for 1 hour. I tell you.
So ultimately, that would be your defense to if a client has paid you 20 million shillings to deliver something, and comes and says, "Look, I paid this 20 million, but I haven't seen the drive or the sales increase that I was hoping to achieve from this 20 million.
It sounds crazy, but I'll tell you that if you give me 20 million and you give me a KPI, the first thing I say is, can 20 million deliver that KPI? In some cases, you're asking me to sell millions, and 20 million is not what you need to spend. You need to spend a bit more than that. Then we look through the line. We look at your pricing, we look at your packaging, we look at where you are, how available you are to that consumer, how relevant you are. A lot of times when clients come to us, we actually shift. They come with one problem, and when we go back, we come and tell them, the problem you're solving is not the real problem, or it's not the right problem. This is what you should be trying to solve. And I think that's what more people need to be doing, because that's what clients value. They don't want an agency that they walk in and say, this is my problem. And I say, okay, yes, this is your problem. And here, because in the end, it will show, because then it won't work. So that's really what we bring to the table.
Okay, I sort of wind up this
Yes, because you've talked a lot about work.
This it's usually where it sort of starts.
Yes.
Just to give an understanding of the
Sure.
person who's on the podcast. What's allowed you guys to stand out? I mean, because I think, within, like you said, in a very short time, you've achieved quite a bit. You've won a bunch of pitches, one really big one recently that, has been publicized quite a bit. What's allowed you guys to stand out and be exceptional?
I think for us, what has allowed us to stand out is our belief in we can build great local brands. We understand consumers extremely well, and we push back a lot on when clients come to us to say, this is what you should bring. I'm not a yes agency. I tell people that a lot of times. I've said no to big brands because I don't believe we will have a meeting of minds. I'm not here to do and regurgitate what the client wants me to do. I'm here to solve real business problems. And I think a lot of people in agencies think their work is to do just great advertising. But great advertising only works if it actually solves the problem that the client is facing. If it actually drives that last mile delivery or conversion for the client, that's what works. And we are true to that. We hold ourselves accountable a lot. I tell people there is no need of being creative if it's not effective. It can be creative and it can be effective, great. But if it's just creative, and I wrote this once on my LinkedIn post, creative for creativity, and that's what a lot of what we are seeing. And over time, what that does is that it ruins your relationship with this client. And that's why clients sometimes just walk away because they say, we've tried everything, it's just not working. But it's because we get so used to just throwing beautiful creative pieces in front of the client. And at the end of the day, the client is held accountable for that money that they spent that is no longer working because nobody wants to really discover what is the true problem that the client is facing.
Yeah. Is that something that a philosophy that you've held on, or is it something that you have learned? The philosophy of, there's no where you're not a yes person, so to speak. Is that something you've always had, you've grown up with, or is it something that you grew up into?
I feel like I've always had it, but my voice has become louder over time.
Yeah.
I always had it. I always had a very strong point of view on things. But I think my belief has been built because I have seen it working over time. When we started this agency, when I went to some of my previous clients, when we spoke, the only thing I told them is just give me a chance to pitch. I didn't say, I've handled your business for 12 years, 30 years, you know me, because I needed to prove myself again. They knew me backed by a huge organization. But who was I with 10, employees, 20 employees, not, backed by an entire network? Who was I? So I knew and I understood that. And I think most people, that's where they fail. Because I think that because I have worked with you, you should now know me as Sally, and therefore, I need a favor. But nobody is working for favors. Even that client, has somebody to report into and say, why did you bring this person on board? And therefore, that's the only thing I ever did. The first thing I did was to build credentials and say, this is my difference that I'm bringing to you. Give me an opportunity to come and pitch. Tell me what problem I can come and solve for you. Let me pitch against other agencies, and then let's see if I can win. And I did it. I won and won and won. And I tell you, I don't feel any embarrassment in saying we win because we know exactly what we are doing. There is a formula to this madness.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that people don't want to understand, because people think it's just creative. It's not just creative. There's a lot of things that go into the background of a great creative that actually delivers results.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was your upbringing like? What was the kind of environment you grew up in, and what was money like? I mean, you've talked about already going to Canada, so I assume there was some money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not very much money when we were young. My dad was in the army. Obviously, as he progressed in the army, he rose up to be quite senior in the army. And when he left the army, he then became an ambassador for some 6 years or so. So it's not like we were starved of money. And when you're in the army, everything is provided for you by the army. So there were drivers. The moment I realized that life was not like that was when I actually came to work at the Nation Media Group, my first job as a sales executive. Now, I don't have a car. I don't have a driver. I don't know Nairobi very well. I've never gone anywhere in a matatu. I've never gone anywhere in a bus. And I just know nothing. But the best things the best thing, I was ready. I was gung-ho. I said, I can do this. And I met a lady who turned out to be one of my best friends today. And we learned together. You know, she
was
came
also
from the
from a
village. She came from the village. She was worse than me. At least I had been in Nairobi in a car, but
Yeah.
it was her first time. She came to Nairobi when she joined campus.
Yeah.
And then that was her first job. But we were determined to learn together. We learned, we failed, we discovered industrial area. We went to the wrong offices. We were late for appointments because those days you're using a matatu. There are no phones. You can't even tell the client that you're running late.
Yes.
But to me, when I grew up, money was not something that I thought about because it's not that it was not there. I could ask for something and I would get that something. My mom was stricter than my dad. My dad was he grew up in hardship, but when he got money, he was very generous with his money. My mom grew up in hardship as well, but she tightened her belt because she always remembered that, those days. And till today, she reminds us that even if you have the money, you have to continue working. That's her ethos. So I'm a mix of both. There are days I'm extremely generous with money. There are days that I remember, there can be tough times. So you have to always, keep something extra.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even at this point in time, when you're saying you're working for Nation Media Group, first of all, do you remember what your sort of payment check was like?
My first salary was 12,000 shillings gross.
There was no commission.
There was no.
I was
a salesperson.
Yes.
So you earned a commission. I think my first commission was like 60,000. But by the time I was leaving Nation Media Group, my commission was in a month I could easily make 1.5 million in commissions. And it was crazy because I actually started realizing that, you see, because the money was now coming so easily, I had gotten good clients. My clients were actually chasing me to book ads. But then I started thinking that if I stay here, then I will not build a career. I'll remain a salesperson. That money of commission is very sweet. I can tell you that. Because at the end of month, I know more money is coming. I could spend it fast enough. But it's like a drug because then it starts making you not realize that. But I studied, I wanted to build a career.
Yes.
This is just a sales gig. And then when I looked around the sales room, there were guys who were in their 70s still in sales because they never got out of that thing of just earning that extra commission.
Right.
And so they never really built a career. And while they worked in Nation for years, they were now working. They had even been moved now to become freelancers. So they weren't even getting the base check anymore.
Yeah.
They were just there because if you sell, we'll pay you something.
Right.
And that really woke me up. And after about 4 years of that, I said, I really have to get out of this. And in the back of my mind, I knew I wanted to get into advertising because we had been dealing with a lot of agencies. My eyes had opened. I was seeing this is something that interests me. It was close to sales, but a bit different. And so I started reaching out to people and telling them I'm interested in getting into advertising. And luckily for me, immediately I started looking. Within, I think, a month of looking, I got my first agency job.
Okay.
Yeah.
A question on because it sounds like you are working at Nation at the heyday of print media and legacy media. How easy was it to sell those days vis-a-vis now, from whatever experience you might have with the people
those
now?
days? Considering that when we got the job, we were hired to sell the East African. It was a new paper. Nobody had done a weekly paper about East Africa. And we struggled at first because we sold it like a daily Nation. And then we had to realize that, these clients, first, they have to be represented across East Africa to be interested in that news. Who is the kind of client that wants to communicate to this audience? It was in-depth business news. So, it took us a while. And when we learned then that these are the kind of businesses that would want to advertise a KCB because they already have branches in Uganda and Tanzania, business people that are spread across the region, people who are interested in entering this region, then it shifted. And that's when we started making money. But it took us a long time to start getting that commission. It was still heydays, but people were interested in news those days and people read newspapers. But then came the advent of digital. Today, I don't even know when is the last time I held a newspaper. I even don't subscribe to the online newspapers because I just feel the news is faster than the paper can be printed. And then I can search for anything that I want. I don't have to wait for the paper anymore. I think today, anybody who is doing sales must really be struggling. I don't even know what they potentially could be earning, but I wouldn't want that job.
Yeah.
I don't envy anybody who is selling space in a newspaper, because even for us, when we are booking more and more, we don't get clients, apart from maybe when they are announcing their financials,
legally
when they have one launch ad and then immediately switch to social media. So I don't envy anybody who's still in that business. And I think those days are long gone. The heydays are long gone.
They're not coming back.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're not coming back.
Before we started the podcast, you said you're really grateful for the time you had in sales because it taught you everything you needed to know about life. What are some of like really quick lessons, other than what you've talked about already, that maybe you can highlight that sales taught you?
I tell everybody that sales is life. Everything we do, even now I'm selling myself in one way or another. Somebody will listen to this and reach out. Selling is not easy. You need to understand your product. You need to understand the value of that product to the person that you're going to sell it to. But we sell ourselves every day, even in personal lives. I mean, when you go and meet a babe, you're selling yourself to that person and saying, hey, this is me, this is my you. See, you put your best foot forward for somebody to consider and say, okay, I'm willing to try that out.
Yeah.
It was tough. It needed a lot of effort. You would have to convince somebody. So it taught me patience, to the waiting game, that this might not pan out today, but I would still say, let me send them the paper because they need to, see the value it's bringing for them. Who else is advertising? It taught me all the tricks of the trade. And I think people underestimate the power of being a good salesperson. I talked to some lawyers because long time ago, lawyers were not really allowed to advertise their services.
Yes.
But recently that law was changed. And today, so all of a sudden lawyers could start competing against each other by marketing themselves. And my sister-in-law called me to talk to her firm because she has young lawyers and they just sit in the office the whole day. They're just waiting for people to come and knock on the door and say, hey, it's a brief. And that doesn't happen.
Yes.
And so I talked to them about sales. And they said, it was such an eye-opening. They said, I understand law, but I don't understand how to sell. And when I was speaking to them, and they found it because sales itself, it feels like a very complicated thing, very hard thing, but it's something that we do every day. It's just how to incorporate it. And I tell people that I never used to sit in the office, ever. I would go in the morning, pick my paper, confirm my, because there was a landline.
Yes.
Confirm all my appointments for the day because you can't call them during the day. Yeah. And then now you go out into the streets. Yeah. Till today, I believe that. When I see people sitting around too much, I'm like, there's something wrong. You're not spending enough time with the client. You're not spending enough time in market. It really taught me that you have to be hands, feet, everything on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, when you're earning these really, really good commissions, what were you doing with your money?
I was living my best life. Shopping, dresses, everything.
You name it.
Going out, traveling. We used to go. Me and my best friend. Now we had discovered Dubai. We used to go to Dubai. We shop. We were living our best lives. And then she got married, she started getting children. And then now we were like, oh, you mean, that?
Yeah.
So we started thinking about, okay, now let's get into, we joined, that time, I was working for Nation Media Group. So I joined the Nation Circle. We started buying assets. We started buying like land. We started saying, no, we have to get serious. So that's, it was her getting married sort of was a wake-up call. How long are you just going to be partying and
going to Dubai?
Yeah, and and even when now our Dubai trips changed, we started buying things, started bringing things to sell. Now we were just buying for ourselves. So we started seeing an opportunity. Not many people were going. We would start selling. Even in the office, we would bring shoes, things, and that's how also that business sense sort of also kicked in. Why, we are there for holiday, but why can't we do something more?
Yeah.
And there, our mindset really started changing. Of course, also time, age, maturity comes automatically. And then I changed jobs and
then so even before you get to the change of jobs, I'm really curious about your mindset around, like you've said, there are people who are in their 60s, 70s who are still there because they were earning really good money. I'm really curious about your mindset beyond the money, because you could have stayed there and earned good money for a really long time. But to make a decision to be like, no, I don't want to just keep earning this money. I want to actually utilize some of other skills that I have. And I assume it was at the expense of some of the money that you were earning at that point in time.
Of course, I left that money, and when I got my new job, my first salary I think was 55,000. So I went all the way back, but I was determined to start understanding an advertising business from the ground. And while it was a sacrifice, I understood that if I did not know the basics, if I didn't know the foundation, I would never be successful at it. And even then, I always knew that I wanted to one day own my own business. Not necessarily an agency, but I knew eventually I was going to run my own business. And so when I started that business, I said I want to learn the basics. I joined as an account manager, and I think it's just courtesy of the fact that I had worked in Nation, but I ideally should have been an accountant. I knew nothing about advertising. I just knew that they made ads. That was it.
Yeah.
But I had a very good person that I reported into, who really just took me under her wings and really taught me everything. And I was very open. I learned, I struggled, I failed, and she really allowed me to do all those things. I had acrimonious meetings, I had difficult meetings, I had great meetings, but I learned that job across. I wanted to understand what media was. I wanted to understand what digital was. It was just starting those days. Nobody understood it. I wanted to be well-rounded. I didn't want to be an expert in one thing. Even at that age, I understood that you needed to be able to offer more than just one thing. And I wanted to be an expert.
Yeah.
So I went back to a very small salary, but it grew over time, as it always does. If you do your job well, it grew over time. And when it was not growing, I demanded it. And in that case, when I demanded it and they said no, I decided I'm leaving. And that is how I joined Scan Group, because I said, I called, by then I knew people in the industry. So I started making calls and I said, guys, I need a job. This job is no longer paying me enough. I had moved into a slightly bigger apartment. So my pocket, I was feeling very stretched. And the value of money is to live a good life.
Yes.
I was not going to struggle.
Yeah.
As I was progressing and I understood that now I knew and I had something to offer. I said, even if I'm interviewed, and I think one of the first people who ever interviewed me was Barrack. Then I had another previous boss at the time called Sunda. So I went to meet that Sunda and we talked. But even then, when he asked me how much I wanted to earn, I tripled the amount.
What was the figure, if you can disclose?
At that time, I think I joined, it was maybe now I had gone up to 160, about 160, 180,000 gross. And I was asking for a lot of money.
Yes.
But I told him, there is nobody else who can do what I do. I knew at the time that I had done my homework. I knew that somebody else had just left and they were, they needed somebody quickly.
Yeah.
It was a big client for them. So I talked the game. I sold myself and they gave me the job.
How do you, if you were to sort of summarize, as you're talking, doing the interview and saying, nobody else can do what I do, if you could sort of try and summarize for me, what are the skills at that point in time that you're selling?
Yeah, so now I told them, because at that time I understood that integration was not a big thing, but it was becoming big. I understood a bit of media. I understood advertising. I knew below the line I could do BTL. I mean, I had really immersed myself across the board. And most people at that time, especially when they were that junior, they could only do one thing. I'm here to do account management. I can only manage a client. But if the client tells me anything about media, I don't know what they're talking about. If they ask me about which is the right channel to be on, do you think I should do radio out of home? No, people didn't know that. That time, agencies were extremely siloed. There was a media team, there was an account management team, there was a creative team. Everything was siloed. On top of that, I had, because the lady who had sort of mentored me was extremely good in strategy. So I had the initial learnings of strategy. So that is what I sold. I said, I can do the work of 3 people because I can go to one client and I can come back having come with all the solutions for these things. Yes. That is how I sold myself. And I always felt that you had to be able to do more than anybody. No, you can't just be an account manager. You have to be curious. You have to be interested. You have to learn everything because that's the value I was bringing. And that is why I felt I could command more money.
Yeah.
And I could do it. I wasn't just talking a game. I had sat with media teams. I always never allowed a media person to come into my meeting when I didn't know what she was coming to talk about, because I always felt it's my meeting. She's not going to come and let me down. The client knows me. That is an attitude I have until today. If you're going to come for a meeting with me, I always tell people, I don't carry messengers. Everybody who comes into this meeting must have something relevant to say or have a very good point of view to add value to this conversation.
Not just for the sake of...
I believe that until today.
Yeah.
So I always tell people I don't carry many people for meetings because I don't want to just carry flowers. You come and bring something to the table. Because even the client is paying for our time. Therefore, we must deliver that excellence.
That good party. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question to ask you, which is it would take us off your story just for a second.
Yes.
But it's off of a presentation that I attended, maybe it was a month ago, by this new digital influencer product called Zaumu that was launched by a friend of mine called Said. And he was saying they had done some research and they had seen that the billboards on Wayakiwe, I think between I won't get the exact words he said, but it was either between Wayakiwe and before you even get to Naivasha, not far, but there were about 22 or 24 billboards or something. And you're saying the amount of money that was spent on those 24 billboards in the year was more money that was spent in the influencer ecosystem for the year. I think it was like times 6 or times 7, like a crazy amount. And so for me, I'm curious for your point of view on, even though now people talk about the benefits of digital media and how you'll see direct ROI and you'll be able to see this, you'll be able to see this. The thinking behind brands still spending billions of shillings on billboards vis-a-vis spending it on an asset that quote unquote may give them better ROI, so to speak, which I would assume are metrics that would be important for people when they're spending money. Yeah.
I think the first thing I'll say to that is that, media, there is no one channel that can be the magic, the silver bullet, as people say. You have to compound. So the billboard, what is the role of the billboard? The role of the billboard is ubiquity. Everybody sees it immediately. Everybody knows what the product is immediately. Everybody can identify it immediately. So it does play that role of immediately showing this is a big brand. They're spending on billboard. Everybody sees it at once. So the product is, But how do you push it? Because I've seen that billboard, but I'm seeing 24 others just after that billboard. So now maybe I'm in a matatu, I'm listening to radio. So I'm doing some radio activation. It's just compounding. You saw the billboard you had. Now the product is available here. I'm telling you a bit more benefit about the product. Then I maybe watch, I'm on social media. I'm seeing a post, somebody sends me something on WhatsApp. So everything compounds. I always tell people the most powerful media plan is an integrated media plan. Nothing works on its own. There even social, as much as people say social media, it's not enough because as people, today somebody asked me and said, we were talking about a mass client. And the first thing everybody said, social media. Then I told them, guys, I'm talking to a rural person. What is social media to that person? We still have to remember that in this market, that wall branding is one of the first things that person sees. That is the immediate, because many people are still walking. That kiosk branding is where he's getting his information. So I feel like if you are clear about your audience, then you are clear about what is their source of information. And therefore, that is where you should communicate. Some brands will do very well actually only on social media, but there are very few brands. If you want mass reach, because if you're a national brand, you cannot afford not to be on all channels. Some of them, of course, what is happening is that we are seeing less spend on traditional media and growing spend on digital media. But everything compounds. So it's always a balance because at one point I'm in the matatu, another point I'm now in the shamba, I'm listening to a radio. So depending on the audience, it always has to be about the audience. If it is a higher end audience, he's driving in his car, maybe he's only in his car in the morning and in the evening. The rest of the time he's not in his car, he's not listening to radio, and he doesn't ever find any other opportunity to listen to radio. So what can I sell to him at that morning and evening hour? The rest of the time radio is irrelevant to him. So it's always about time. 10 o'clock break, lunchtime break, 4 p.m. What is the first thing people do? Start scrolling on social media. At what point is that person on that channel? So that relevance of who is this person? What is their source of information? Where am I likely to get them when the attention is absolutely right? Then you make your media plan. It's not guesswork. And I think that's the thing. Okay. That's the problem.
Okay. A contrarian thought on that before we move on. Do you think digital media, social media as a whole, either are pricing themselves wrong vis-a-vis their value proposition, or what's the other position I want to I guess or do they overvalue their role in the process? Like, though you've explained it,
Yes.
You're just a small piece of the puzzle. So do you think there's a little bit of that?
So there are two things. You see, there's digital media, which means that you're buying media on platforms.
Yeah.
But then there is also creators. There is what we call influencers. And there is also the brand itself and just running their own social pages. I think for a lot of influencers, times are changing where there were no real ways of monitoring. the influencer, high engagement, high following, high, all those things were great. But then when clients are looking more and more at the bottom line, they start questioning what is the effect of this person. And those days, they weren't really any KPIs. People said, oh, make it go viral. Then they realize it can go viral, but nobody sells anything. You understand? Everybody will talk about it. But when the client goes to the shop to look at those lipsticks that you are advertising, the lipsticks are not moving. So people started now saying, what is the best way to use them without... And then, of course, also, I think there's an element of people trying to really change. An influencer is an influencer and is liked because of who they are, their authenticity, so whether it's comedy, whether it's laughter. If you start, because as a brand, now you start telling them to become your brand, they're not your brand. They have their own brand. And what you should do is compliment them and let them be authentic in trying to sell your brand. Again, is he credible in selling your brand? People are trying to sell you phones worth 160,000 and using somebody who does not even use that phone. So sometimes you have to really think about these things. So I always say that there is a method to the madness, but people skip that method. And I always say that is why people have to pay a good digital media agency or an traditional media agency, because there is a science to buying media. But a lot of people, they go with, my gut tells me, people say it's Radio Africa is the most popular, this channel, it doesn't work that way. There is so much science. And if you use the science, you will succeed. But if you decide, it's just gut feel, but this other brand is doing it, their fly is selling, how do you know? How do you know that? So I think that more and more professionalism is coming into it. And therefore, what you're going to see is there's going to be a lot of changes. Some of the people who are very popular in terms of getting gigs for influence is going to stop, because we are also seeing, like when you talk to Frankie, you see the tool that they brought. You see, it's bringing a lot of measurable results. It's showing you in real time who is the right person to say. You see, before that wasn't there.
Yeah, it wasn't.
We were all just guessing.
Or likes.
We were just likes, engagements, clicks. Those are the things that we were going for. But we don't have to go for that anymore, because if a client is holding you responsible for a particular amount of money, then you have to be responsible with that budget. And you have to make sure that you come as close as possible. It can't be perfect, but as close as possible to making sure that the science works for the client.
Okay. All right. Let's come back.
Yes.
So now you get to Scan Group, and now you've gotten this good job, and you've multiplied your salary. You're trying to slowly creeping back to where your commissions were.
Yes.
What's your life that, on a personal level, what's your money situation there like? Do you have a budget philosophy? Is it until the money ends?
No. It was very okay. I always used to start my budget by saying, okay, I must pay rent. I must pay those days, everybody, DSTV. I must pay. So I used to just put together that, and then I used to spend the rest. So still, I was not money-wise. As long as I could pay my bills, I felt entitled to the rest of it. Nobody needed to ask me. I mean, in another 20 days, I'm going to get another salary, So that was my philosophy. And it held for a while. But then I started thinking that, okay, what will it take to grow in this agency? And I started having serious conversations with my boss. I was like, what will it take to be, second, even to take your job?
Yes.
And so again, I started immersing myself, started saying, okay, I knew a bit of strategy. Let me spend money in educating myself. How do you do strategy? I started now paying for courses. So I was not just spending all the money anymore. I started now saying, let me educate myself. Okay. So I did a number of courses online. I did some some certificate courses, because I said, I can talk a good game, but I needed to make sure that it's backed by real knowledge, real understanding, for me to be credible even as I grew into the role, and for people to respect me, so to speak, or my work. So I started putting aside budgets for that. I started saying, now, invest in your career, invest in your knowledge. I would go for talks. I started joining professional associations, making those annual subscriptions, because I was like, you need to know the right people, because you never know. That's where you'll meet clients and all those type of things. And towards that time, now I'm getting into my 30s, I started saying, now start putting some savings aside. So I opened some savings accounts where I would just automatically, money is deducted, it goes there. I started looking at unit trusts, got into 1 or 2 unit trusts. I didn't know too much about it. I was just really investing based on peer pressure. Everybody's doing it. People are talking about unit trusts, even me.
Some money there.
So somehow slowly I was growing my portfolio. My friend who remained in the media, working in the media, she would tell me, our circle is selling this. She's still pushing me. I'm just buying some little land. I'm like, one day these things will all come to play. But I would say that my philosophy on money has improved over the years. As I matured, I also held myself to account. I still indulge, but I started holding myself more to account. I started putting more money on the side for future, but I'm a believer that honestly, I cannot just be working this hard. And if tomorrow I decide it's a long holiday, it has been announced and I cannot book a flight and go somewhere, then I'm doing myself an injustice. So I started making sure that I always had that money of, I'm going to go and do these things when I want them.
Right.
The times that I have not been able to do that has been the last 2 years, because when you're building a startup, everything for me was committed to that startup. I had to sacrifice those holidays. I had to sacrifice any of those extra things because you will see that I love jewelry.
Yes.
And I love expensive jewelry.
Yes.
I stopped indulging in those things and I put everything because I said, I am not going to fail. I will do everything to build this business. I will put any money. I laugh. Sometimes I tell people there were days, we would be struggling. It would be like 21st, we are going to be paying salaries this week. And we would be like, you pay this person 300 on M-Pesa, you pay. And people see the success, but people never see the sacrifice. And the sacrifices have been there. And for us to reach where we've reached, it is because it would have been easy to say, we can't do it anymore, or not to continue building, not to continue hiring. But that would have been the wrong move. Whatever sacrifice because when you start, you say, I'll just need maybe this amount of money, 100 million. Then you discover that money goes so quickly and there are so many bills to be paid. For us to look like a serious agency now, we needed a serious space. We started in one person's backyard, moved into Delta, these co-shared co-working spaces. And then we said, quickly, we have to get us an office. Because for an advertising agency, our office is like our showroom. The way Toyota, that is their showroom. That's our showroom. And when people come, they see you now as serious. They can sit in a boardroom, they see people working. They begin to say, okay, these guys are serious. They're not just, fly-by-night agency, not able to do my work.
Right.
And so we had to invest. We continued to invest. Actually, I would say that the first month that we will take a salary is this month. We have never taken since we started. We said until we can pay ourselves and pay ourselves without any stretch, no struggle, that will be the first month that we will pay.
So this, and technically speaking, this is
May 31st.
This is May 31st.
It will be 2 years since we left Scan Group. So no salary,
you're getting
no
salary.
Nothing. Yeah,
yes.
Just using our investment, our savings, everything, everything that you have, we threw at this business.
So in these 2 years where you've been living without a salary, what's the largest downgrade you've had to do for yourself in order to be able to afford life in these 2 years? I mean, you talked about, not buying expensive jewelry.
Not traveling as much as I wanted, for sure. Not buying as much jewelry as I wanted. And sometimes one of the biggest things for me was not being able to be present for my family members the way I would have wanted. Because where my mom would have said, just give me this, somebody else would have said, and I am very generous with my family. I was not able to really just be, and that was the worst thing for me. And even then, I still sacrificed. I would still say, I have to give you something. I would have given you more, but still I pushed myself. But we put money aside. I put money aside at the beginning of this and said, how much can I put in the bank to make sure that I have an investment that will mature at 2030? Because I also took part of my pension out to put in this business over and above every other amount of money that I had. And so I locked some funds. And you know how it is bad to be broke, but in your bank, you have millions, but you even sometimes have to fulliza, man, because you are like, how will I manage,
Yeah.
But that's what it takes. And I think that's the part that people don't understand, that you have to really give it everything to build what you want to build in life, not just the business. To me, this is sort of my legacy. When I started all those years ago, this is exactly what I wanted and where I wanted to be. And I said I wanted to give it everything without somebody holding money they've given me over me, which is also another reason why we wanted to give everything. We didn't necessarily want, in the early days, investors who then would derail our vision for the business or take us in a different direction. So yeah, we gave.
So you're telling us, behind all the fantastic LinkedIn posts on,
Drinks,
we have
cheers.
we have now signed so and so. We are now working with. So you guys have not paid yourself.
We have not paid ourselves.
The end of this month.
This month we will get a paycheck and we will be extremely pleased, right? My banker might call me like, "What's going on?" Yeah, but
that's impressive.
Yeah,
that's impressive
because we've really dug deep into savings, into anything that we had really ever kept aside.
Yeah. How do you, if we can talk a little bit about it from what you can disclose, how do you prepare yourself to get to that point? Did you know you were going to exit when you exited? Was it the plan? And how do you, because even, that's 2 years of a business where you're saying, you're putting in your investment, and even though you had probably made some really good money and some good investments, they say it's like construction where whatever amount you've put aside, it's always going to be more. It's never enough than what you imagine. Yeah. So how do you prepare yourself?
I don't think you can prepare yourself. Well, I'll tell you what I did. When we left because of a voluntary early exit. There was a plan. Initially when we left, individually, me and my co-founders we didn't have any plan to do what we've done. I knew I was going to start a business one day, but I needed a break. I had been working for 21 years and I was like, I didn't want to think about it. But then one day, maybe 1.5 months after we left, somebody called me and said, "Can you take part in a pitch?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? I don't even have an agency. I have nothing, So I called my 2 co-founders. I left the group with them at the same time. And I told them, we have an opportunity to do a pitch. Are you guys game? I'm not even talking about a business. I'm just telling them, let's do this pitch. Then we started saying, okay, no, but how will we participate in a pitch? Because they'll ask for credentials, they'll ask for resources, it's part of the pitch. So we started thinking. We had been talking about it, but it was never serious. You know how you have a conversation, but you're like, as long as you're employed, everything is okay. But then we decided, now let's go for it. We said, let's come up with a name. Who are the immediate 4 or 5 people we can hire? Creative, account management person, 2 people. Let's get it done. And then we started. And we participated in that pitch. It was a crazy experience. We were working out of somebody's garden, my dining table. It was crazy. We had to buy laptops. Because all of us were sort of on a break.
Oh, no, yeah, you're relaxing.
Yeah, we were relaxed. Then we started and we went for that pitch and everything sort of continued from there.
Did you win that pitch?
No.
Okay.
No.
That particular one you didn't win it?
No, we did not win it. Even I would not have awarded us because while yes, the creative was good because we are good at what we do.
Yes.
Obviously, anybody could see that we were not yet there. We were not yet a serious agency. And if they really, and it was one of a big bank. But we were like, why not? And I think that's the attitude that always, pushes us. We've always had that, why not? Let's go for it.
Yeah.
And, that day didn't work. But days after that, other things worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe in your latter sort of leadership roles at the organization that you left, what was managing money, expectations, return for shareholders and things like that? What was that process like?
When you work for a network, everything is about the bottom line. Everything is about the shareholder value. That is a daily word we live with. The pressure was intense. The pressure was intense to always win new business, always retain new business, always increase the fees. And that pressure is sort of also passed on to the teams. So when the teams come, it's always pressure. You have a big target. Why aren't you hitting that target? You can't hit the target after 2-3 months retrenchment. It's a very... Being part of a network is I would say it's relentless because that's the thing. And this was even worse because it's listed on the stock exchange. So of course, it's everything you do is affecting the share price. And it was a tough business, hard on us because there was an expectation of constantly winning business, constantly being in profit. And it's impossible because market dynamics shift all the time. There are some things you can't control. A big client can walk away. Sometimes they will commit a huge amount at the beginning of the year and business towards the middle of the year, things change and half that spend is never spent or they decide to move that money elsewhere. To me, it was a an endless chase. And one of the reasons why when we started this, we took a while to be part of a network was because we didn't want to get into that rat race.
Rat race again.
Because it's very tough.
Yeah.
It's tough on you. It's tough on your team. It's frustrating because sometimes you have to let people go. And business decisions that are out of your control. And I think that's the hardest part, that whatever recommendation you gave, the last call was never on you, because you're just, a cog, a small cog in a big wheel.
Yeah. Were there ever periods in times where you didn't meet these targets that you're supposed to, that are being set? And what's your feeling like at that process or that period? What's the conversation like with the higher ups when you're not meeting those targets?
I'll tell you that it was extremely tough. And those meetings, many organizations have these meetings maybe once in a month. Ours once every week on a Wednesday. Every Wednesday.
Week.
And every Wednesday, you are expected to come with something new. Either something in the pipeline that's almost 80%, or something new. And it's so difficult because you end up putting that pressure also on your teams. You end up putting that pressure across the system. And a lot of the times, that's not the way to get the best out of people. I understand that is the way that organization worked, but I don't necessarily think that it's the best. You get so despondent. And I think it also impacts the excellence in delivery, because you have to be faster to deliver something that should take 2 weeks. You're doing it in 48 hours, in 72 hours. Of course, you compromise the quality of your work. There's a lot of frustration through the system because clients begin to see mistakes and you're not able to sometimes justify. And then, of course, there's always that pressure to cut. You can be more efficient with few people. And therefore, it starts, affecting the relationship you have with the client. So it had a lot of negative effects, if you ask me, down the line. Yeah.
What do you think that sort of now being in a leadership position and having to be a person who maybe, like you said, maybe you're not making the last call, but you're definitely in a position of influence, and probably your team is looking up to you for leadership in one way or another. The leadership is looking to you for delivery of results. What do you think that did to you as a person? What effect did it have on you, your possible humanity or empathy and that kind of thing?
I think okay, so there were some things that you could mitigate. So we would try to soften it by having sort of more social. We used to have a Friday drink ups. We used to call them then curiosity sessions. We'd bring people to talk, educate, inspire. We would try to do awards. Sometimes we removed money from our own pockets, me and the senior leadership, to buy people gifts for, when they're done well. We would still put together parties, sometimes again contributing out of pocket to celebrate when, we had won. And sometimes those celebrations were really just lost in the bigger picture. I think it taught me to be very empathetic. And what it also taught me is to be hands down with my team. I was never a leader who sat back. I am not a person who sits here and says, you guys do the work. I also became part of their, effort. How can I go and sell with them? How can I tell them how to improve? How can I tell them where to make a shortcut? Where do I see an opportunity for us to make some sort of organic revenue? I really started teaching them in these other skills that were softer. How do they build their relationships? I'd pay for them to take their clients for lunch, buy them flowers, to build those relationships. And it really taught me that when we say a team, many times when people look at leadership, management, you are always separate from your team. It's you here and them here, and you're pushing them, you're sort of whipping them. But I became really part of the team because I really empathized with them. It was really difficult. And in that sense, it's something I've never learned to let go of. Even today, they consider me, when they have a problem, they're just calling me to solve the problem with them, and I think that's a really good thing because it has really kept me very current on anything that's going on. We are able to stop a lot of problems before they become big problems because they don't feel intimidated to say, I've made a mistake, or to say, I just don't know how to deal with this, or to say, can you attend this meeting with me because I just don't know how to manage this difficult client. And one of the things it also made me do was to really say no to that, any sort of either client who brings that pressure sometimes to the agency, or even us sometimes putting that pressure on the teams. Because I don't know if you've noticed that, again, what I would say the last 2 generations as they've gotten into work, they are very different when it comes to that pressure. We had that attitude where we were taught hard work pays, hard work. And for us, it's our philosophy. It's what we learned. But it's not what they learned. And therefore, for them, you cannot tell them all these things. That's a me thing. But for a younger person, you have to really think about where are they coming from. They see the workplace in a very different light from us. They've been brought up very differently about work, because work is not necessarily employment. Work is me sitting in my house doing a podcast and, me doing TikToks. Work is very different. They have options. They don't have to be in an office slaving away to make a bottom line for an organization. And so what does that mean in terms of how we looked at work? I think that's a big takeaway of how do we make this a place where people actually want to come and work, actually enjoy working. And they are hard when they say that, some of these things just don't work for me anymore. I need to take a break. I need maybe a flexible day. I need an afternoon off. Maybe I need a break. All those things where we could never have tolerated, never. It would never have been possible where we were working.
Yeah,
but those are things that we took away from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess finally, as we're getting to a tail end, is it's such a big organization. How do you reward, especially for one that is so keen on the bottom line? Because again, like we have mentioned, you're on the securities exchange. It's all about the bottom line. How do you reward adequately value drivers, and who then becomes the most valuable person in the business? Is it possible to have a person in the team who, technically speaking, purely because of their abilities, are a bigger value driver than people in potentially in leadership, and could therefore then earn more money than people potentially in leadership? Or what's that structure like?
I think, I can't speak into my previous organization, which is all the things that you described, but I can definitely speak into this organization. It is built in to the way we work. Rewards are built in, whether it's a sport bonus, whether it's increments. We have performance reviews twice a year. And those performance reviews, many organizations do performance reviews, but it's just because it's a governance requirement. It's really not because you want to know or progress this person. So we hold it very closely to heart. Our work is our people. Without our people, there is no work. There are people who are great, but you cannot be great at the expense of the team. Everybody brings something to the table. And I think that is something that we've really learned. So we have built-in rewards. We reward immediately. We celebrate immediately. We recognize immediately, even if it's just that somebody delivering to you something before time. We have these regular meetings where you call out these people. We have a WhatsApp group where, you say this guy did this, thing to me. And it's built into our culture because it was not necessarily something that was there. And we did not have too much control of it in the past, but we do now.
Okay. So as we sort of wrap up, what's money for you now? What does money mean to you now? I mean, having just about to receive your first salary in 2 years, having had working to the leadership of a really big organization and earning some good money in your career, what does money fundamentally mean to you?
For me, and it's different for many people, but for me, money is an enabler of things that I want. I want to be able to support my family if they were ever in need. I want to be able to, enjoy life with them, pay for a trip for them, if that's something that they're interested in. I want to be able to take good breaks to go and learn. I want to travel the world. I love traveling. Money enables me to do these things. Money also enables me to give myself me time. In a crazy world, money enables you to be able to take 1 week off, to step back. I tell you, freedom. If you don't have money, you can't do that. Whether you're burning out, whether, you have a problem up country, somebody is dying. Money, if you don't have money, you don't have choices. And I say money gives me choices. Money gives me options to really be able to do the things I want. And that's, to me, what money is. And I'm not a person who is crazy that I have to have. I don't need to be a billionaire. I just need to have money to do the things that I want to be able to do. And I'm able to work hard for it. I don't hold on to money very tightly. I'm not those people who feels that, I have to save absolutely every penny. I don't believe in that. I also believe that if you spend money, money does come back. If you spend it on the right things. I'm not wasteful, but I also am not very stingy about money. That is my money philosophy. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming, for speaking so frankly, so openly about money and speaking about your journey and giving us all the insight about the industry as well. Really, really appreciate you. Thanks for coming Financially Incorrect. And for everyone else, thanks for watching. We will see you guys next Friday on the next episode of Financially Incorrect.